Chronicles of a Play Therapist podcast is raw, unfiltered, and unapologetic, discussing mental health from a play therapy specialization, including trends, treatment approaches and techniques, theory, and the business of psychotherapy practice. Get ready to learn and play with your host, licensed clinical social worker and registered play therapist supervisor, Althea Simpson.
All right. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Chronicles of a Play Therapist. I am your host, Althea Simpson, licensed clinical social worker and registered play therapist supervisor. I am the founder of Unicorn Life Play Therapy and Brighter Day Therapeutic Solutions. Today's episode is all about the business of psychotherapy practice, and I am here with a guest, Paul Bashea Williams, who is also a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm going to let him introduce himself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Paul.
Yeah, Thea, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. You are, first of all, you downplay how dope you are when it comes to play therapy in general, not just Black play therapy, just play therapy in general. I was just talking about you the other day, and I said she's the queen of all play therapy across the board. Across the board. So I'm excited to be here. You're welcome. You're welcome.
But like you said, for a second, therapy is for everyone. I love that t-shirt. Yes, I love that t-shirt.
Yeah, it's really dope. Yeah. But my name is Paul Bashea Williams, as you said. I am a licensed clinical social worker in the DMV area. I specialize in couples and Black men and Black boys. Do a lot of work around that. I'm also the author of Dear Future Wife, A Man's Guide and a Woman's Reference to Healthy Relationships, which is essentially a workbook. It's not just a read, but a workbook to work on your individual relationship, your relationship with your past, your relationship with your partner, whether you're single, dating, married, courting, divorced. It's something in there to help you heal and really understand relationships. So like I said, I only operate heart to mind counseling and where I do my private practice thing.
Well, thank you for agreeing to do this interview. I wanted to focus on the business of psychotherapy practice because we have a lot of therapists who are in a mindset, one, that we are not, because we're in a helping profession, we are not supposed to earn a decent living, let alone go beyond a decent living. And so I want to, and that's why I decided to add the business of psychotherapy practice to the podcast. And the podcast is Chronicles of a Play Therapist, but in order to become a registered play therapist, you have to be a licensed psychotherapist anyway. So, but the mindset is that we are supposed to lack because we are in the helping profession and we are helping professionals, and that's just not true. And so we can move beyond traditional therapy as mental health professionals and move outside of the psychotherapy room. So can you talk a little bit about your experience as psychotherapists and moving beyond the couch or outside of the traditional realm of psychotherapy?
Right. So that was the original message that was told to me. I had no interest in becoming a therapist or being in social work because my thought process and the stories that were told that therapists or social workers don't make any money. And it wasn't until my mentor, who was making probably 1990, he was making about 100K in private practice and doing some other things. And he was like, there's ways that you can earn money. And it was a white guy. So he was like, and we need more of you in your community and less of me because you have a greater connection. So I said, all right, let me explore this a little bit, see how I can do it. Now, when you first graduate, those numbers look like the story that's being told.
Yes.
So at that particular time, I said, I need to find other ways to utilize my skills, even though I'm not licensed, to utilize my skills to get these messages out of helping and healing and find a way that I can brand or market myself until I get to my license. That's why I started my Instagram page under Bashea Williams. And I just started to do speaking. I started to write. I started to talk to different networks and stuff like that and just kind of expand and see how I can generate more income to subsidize what I wasn't getting at the time until I can do my own private practice. So that was my journey from just not being and working for child welfare, but making other streams of money. And I think it was just so important and I needed it, to be honest with you.
Absolutely. And I think that that's important. The narrative that we're told about going into the psychotherapy field, I think it's a narrative that needs to be shattered. But I also don't want therapists to think that coming out the gate, you're going to be making six figures. Not saying that it's not possible, but I think a lot of therapists have unrealistic expectations of salary, not understanding that you got to do the work. You got to do the groundwork. Like people see what I do. So I have my psychotherapy practice, I have my consulting business, and I have a training institute. And people see that. And they're like, oh, that's where I want to get to. Okay, but you have to do the work. That didn't just happen overnight. Now, my psychotherapy business kind of was just thrown at me. And I mean, it happened and it grew, but there are still processes that you have to have in place to make sure that you can sustain it. But everything else, I had to put in the work, and it took self-investment, financial investment, emotional investment, physical investment. So I don't want people to think that it's going to just happen, because it happens like that for some people, but other people have to work for it. But I've always wanted to be a social worker. But even then in high school, I didn't realize the realm that we can, being a social worker, what you can do as a social worker. And so, but I was discouraged because I was told that you wouldn't make any money. You're too nice. You're going to give everything you make away anyway. And I went to a high school that was developing a business and finance program. So I was in that program, and they was like, you have a great mind for business. That's the route you should go. And so that's the route I took. And then it wasn't until, but every job that I had in the business sector was connected to social services or healthcare. So I ended up going back to school, and I wasn't even supposed to be a psychotherapist. I went to school to get a macro degree for organizational leadership. And then I just happened to fall into therapy, and I've been in therapy ever since. I mean, I think that it's great for to have the diversity, to be able to diversify your income. Why do you think it's important for therapists to have multiple streams of income?
Just basic survival, right? Sometimes if we're working with insurance companies, sometimes it might be a little slow on their repayment. Sometimes it might reject a claim. If we're doing for out of pocket, and sometimes the client doesn't have the money. Sometimes we go swipe that card and it doesn't come through. So now we're just strictly dependent on insurance companies. You got to get paneled. They have all types of things. Just think about, I'm working with Medicaid right now, and they had this whole shutdown of their system. So they have not been paying us according to what we're doing. So if I was just solely relying on that, I would be in trouble.
Yes.
So being able to rely on other things and savings and all those different things is so vital. And as a therapist, again, if you're first coming out, you have to build your clientele. So if you decide to branch out, and if you don't have that client, if you don't have that demographic that needs you, or you can't seem to find out what your niche is, then you're going to struggle, and it's going to be frustrating, because now not only are you serving people, but you're not getting a return on investment. Not only did you invest in all these things, but you're not getting a return from that. So it's important to have that backup plan, the contingency plan, that supportive plan, all those different things. And we also experience burnout. So if I'm all the way into my clients and then I experience burnout, where's my fallback? I'm just shutting down my practice, and then I don't have any income coming in. And then that's that other pressure and anxiety about, oh, I have to see clients. Now I have to see 50, 60 clients. I see people seeing so many clients just to sustain themselves during a week to match a salary, because again, you don't have benefits. It's all these different things that happen. But if you have that contingency plan, that supportive plan, also diversity of your income, the things are coming in, the passive income. So when you go to sleep, money is still coming in. It's not a exchange for time, money for time. Then that gives you a little sense of ease. You're able to connect with your client. You're not looking at your client like, all right, how much is this client going to be paying, and then you're not stressing out about those things.
And I think I'm so glad you mentioned that, because social media, all of these groups, the therapy groups that we are a part of, and I see how it affects how the money, people have to make a connection there between their emotions and their money and the service delivery. Because when your money not right, Are you
Right.
really in a place to be present for your client? It's a difference
Right.
between, you have to not only show up for your clients, you have to show up and be present. And then if there are issues with money, how present are you with your clients? And
Right.
I just see it so often with therapists, budding therapists to seasoned therapists. When they hit that roadblock with their money and their clients, it's like, it's complaints about the client. Everything about your client starts to bug you, but that's what they come in to help us for. And people need to realize that. So I think you really have to diversify your income. I just got back from spending a week in Maine, but I took 2 weeks off in my practice. So I was off for a week and just stayed local. And then I just drove to Maine and stayed up there for a week. I didn't see clients for 2 weeks, but I wasn't worried about my income because I have a diversified portfolio. I have books, I have my Play Therapy Academy, I have my group coaching. There are so many things that you can do as a therapist, but I think you have to operate in integrity and with some humility and not just throwing things together to make more money. If you build it and the foundation is solid, it will grow, it will prosper.
Yeah.
The one thing you have to do is hold on to your integrity, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. You have to, this process, people think is just up and up and up and up. No, there are backflips, topsy-turvy, and so many things that can go wrong.
Right.
And that's why I think it's so important for us to diversify our income as therapists.
Right. And you said integrity too. So you think about that. That's a major point. So if I show up inauthentic, that's stressful for me. Now I have to keep this fake thing going, fake thing alive. Yeah. And now I'm stressed about that. I'm anxious about that. And I'm stretching myself. So I'm all over the place. And like you said, you took a vacation, but you still had the things that you created still going.
Yes.
Like I just went away. I got married. I took 2.5 weeks off and I allowed my book sales. I allowed my speaking engagements. All that stuff was still happening without me even worried about it. Yeah. So I knew when I got on vacation that I was good. And then when I got off vacation and from the honeymoon, I was excited to see clients. And it wasn't about the money. It was just about, I got my refresh. I'm good. I'm chilling. And this is not a stressful thing. Like I love to help people, but I also have the investment. I also have the return of my help.
Yes. And I want to go back to Medicaid. So I am a dual practice. I do self-pay and I do contracts. So that's more than dual. I have a diversified practice. So I accept insurance. I accept contract. I have contracts and I do self-pay. And a lot of therapists talk about not taking insurance because they're not going to make the type of money that they want to make. Before I even started doing contracts with various child welfare agencies, my practice was primarily, I would say, 85 to 88% insurance based. I could sustain my practice without seeing a whole lot of clients too. I think it's important to know which insurance panels, and this is a thing too. Yeah, if your insurance panel is going to require a whole lot of me, and then the payment or the reimbursement rate is not high, I'm not going to be on your panel. I think you have to look at the types of panels, but so many people are discouraged from starting their practice and having an insurance-based practice because of what they hear or see other people post about insurance. And I'm self-pay. Well, we know people lie on the internet and social media to make things look grand. So, I mean, so I'm here to tell you, and I'm just keeping it real. You can build a solid practice on insurance alone if you wanted to, but you want to try to diversify it. But for those who starting out and you don't have that client base, what people don't understand is that the insurance company is building your reputation, is building your client base. And so that accounts for why it's the payment or the reimbursement rate is lower than what your private pay rate is, but they're giving you clients and helping to build your reputation in the community. So I think that that's important for therapists to know. And then when you're starting out, and if you're single and don't have, or you're married and only have one income, how prosperous is your practice, or how are you going to build that practice when you have 3 people who want to pay private pay, But I think a lot of people get into they forget to tell people, yeah, I'm private pay, but how much did you reduce your rate to be private pay?
That was my whole thing too. Like when I was first starting out, people said, well, do private pay, don't worry about the insurance. I used to post about that on Facebook all the time. But when I left, I worked so hard for child welfare that I was working maybe 40, 50 hours a week. And I wasn't making six figures.
Yes.
So I said, why don't I translate that work into my own self, into my own practice? So I was seeing the Maryland Medicaid. I had contracts with alternative schools where I would go there 2 days a week and see a whole bunch of kids. And because I'm connecting with them, the young boys needed somebody that looked like them, and we would connect and we would have our sessions. I was making a change, a difference, and then my name got out into the community.
Yes.
And so while I'm seeing maybe 20 to 25, almost 30 in Medicaid, I have my other ones that are contracted, or I have my other ones that are out of pocket pay. But Medicaid was paying me.
Yes.
I made, like the first year out, I made six figures, and the majority of that was Medicaid.
Yeah. Yeah. And
so now I'm at the point where I'm able to slow down. I don't have to see as many, but I'm hiring other people who can see Medicaid clients because they want to build.
Absolutely. It's all about your connections, your relationships that you build. And a lot of therapists try to DIY, do it yourself. And they make a lot of mistakes. For me, the first year, I lost so much money the first year of my practice, but it wasn't because I wasn't trying to hire people to help me. Sometimes you have people that see potential in you that you don't see in yourself, and they try to block that, right? So, and I'm so creative, and I just jump off. I take a lot of risk. So I take a lot of risk in my business, and for the most part, it pays off. And so, but I also know that I have to be connected to people for checks and balances. So I have consultants for different things. I have a professional supervisor. So I have a clinical consultant and I have a business consultant and different coaches for things that I want to do. And I think that opening this up, I'm so glad that we're having this conversation so other therapists can realize that you don't have to struggle in your practice and play the blue and pink envelope game. You know what the blue and pink envelope game is, right? Like, okay, I know I'm behind on this bill, but it's not the pink envelope yet, so I know it's not going to get cut off. So you have to, I'm just being real. I've been there. Started as a single, having my business finances and personal finances or bills or expenses. Sometimes I had to kind of juggle that, but I set myself up to be able to educate myself. The great thing for me was I have a business background. I have an undergrad in business management and an MBA in marketing. And so, and having that knowledge has helped me with my practice, but they don't teach you that in school. So I had that to fall back on before I even came into the psychotherapy world, knowing how to set up business and things that I needed, but there are still things that I fell short on. And I had to connect with people that can help me. I have a degree in marketing, MBA in marketing, and I am finishing up my PhD in business psychology consulting.
Wow.
But I still hired someone to help me with my branding and my marketing because I hadn't been in that realm for so long. I was focusing on private practice and psychotherapy that I missed a lot of stuff, right? So I had to hire people that was current on what was up to date, in those fields. And so there are so many things that therapists, have to learn. But they have to be willing, and they have to be willing to make the investment in themselves and not always thinking that, okay, so can I talk about a narrative because both of us are Black, right? That Black tax that you owe me because you made it. There's a thing called sacrifice. I sacrificed a lot of things to get to where I am. Now, anybody that knows me know I give a lot. I give a lot in the realm of business and psychotherapy to help people, but there are some things that you have to take a step back and say, you know what, you need to pay for that. I am giving you information that's going to help you make money hand over fist.
Right.
And
Right.
you don't want to make that investment.
Right. I learned a long time ago about that, how important it is not just investing in yourself, but also investing in other people because the return comes.
Yes.
And so when you were telling your story, all I was thinking about humility. Like, I think sometimes we have this thought process that we got it, we can do it all ourselves. We don't need nobody else. But I don't care how successful you are, being able to connect with people who are like-minded. You can learn from so many different people, whether they are more successful than you or whether they're on the same wavelength or whether they're under you. There's opportunities of learning and connecting. You never know what another person what value they can add to your life.
Yeah.
So you said that somebody, how people say, well, let me pick your brain. Let me do this. Let me do that. There comes a point in time where it's like, no, if we can't exchange, that's the only way we're doing it. Let's exchange. Like, how can we support each other? And me, I don't ask for a lot. Even if you want to pick my brain, what you call it, buy a book. It's $20.
Yep.
You buy a book, I got you.
Yep.
Right. So that's what it looks like, exchanging and being able to be humble and understanding, connected, because that's all we're going to do. You're building a community. That's how I look at us as a community. And people who don't have that mindset often get all types of things misconstrued and get up in their feelings because you're not available.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that is that reciprocity. And even when people are looking for mentors or coaches, they're like, I can do peer groups are good too, but there has to be an exchange. There has to be some reciprocity. You can't continue to take away and take away and take away without pouring something in or giving something back. And a lot of people are in that mindset that you made it, so you need to help me make it. No, I made it because I sacrificed. People don't know what I sacrificed to say. What they see on social media is real. I mean, because I'm not going to front on social media. There's no need for me to front on social media. But what you see is real. And everybody say, I can't stand when I get emails or comments about, I want to be like you, or I can't wait to get where you are. You don't know the emotions, the pain, the tears, everything, the financial blunders and everything that came along with producing what you see me posting on social media. The loss of sleep, the loss of finances, the being sad and crying, all of that stuff comes along with building a business. And then you think I just supposed to just give that to you every time you ask because you want to get there. No, it doesn't work that way. But when did you realize that you needed to hire a branding professional or someone to help you build your brand?
Well, listen, when it was becoming overwhelming, so I did everything initially by myself. I built the Bashea Williams, a Dear Future Wife, all that type of stuff. But I always looked and sought and paid for either some type of coach, whether it was a short-term coaching or something like that. I always invested to my full ability that I could. So probably about 2018, going in 2019, let me say 2019, I said, I really need someone to be able to brand so I don't have to worry about my social media. I don't have to worry about writing letters and emails and contacting people because I need to focus on other things that I can really control and really understand. Yeah, so when I met her, she told me what she was doing branding and how she was connected. And she actually didn't broadcast that, but I looked her up. So I saw in the different things that she was doing, and then I liked the way she crafted things and how professional she was. So she gave a whole survey that I had to fill out before she would even consider me. It wasn't like a person's like, all right, I'm taking everybody that I can take because I want to get that money. She had to take my stuff that she saw. She also read my book and said, let me see if I can, because if I can't, I'm going to pass you on to someone else. But at that particular time, just being able to be professional, being available, and just telling me the different things that she could do in my brand was so important to me. That just took all the weight off my shoulders and be like, I trust this person. I can work like that. And this is what I need because I'm tired of it looking the same. I want to grow and I want to put in all the effort myself because it's taxing. Again, you're seeing clients, you're worried about your home. I got a son, all those different things I was trying to manage at the same time. It was just overwhelming.
I think you said something that's very important that we need to realize that all money is not good money. And I appreciate her approach to that, because even for me, my Play Therapy Academy will be 2 years old in October, but I have 12 people in my academy because, I mean, some people have come in and finished up their play therapy, training that they needed to become registered play therapists. But even for my business coaching, I have a conversation with you. Even for my psychotherapy clients, I have a conversation with you before you come in, because you're not going to stress me. I'm not going to be stressed. I love play therapy. I love training about it, but you're not going to stress me, right? All money is not good money. And you have to pass on some things, because the payoff when you have the wrong person connected, it's not worth it. Right, and I think that is so important for like whether it's psychotherapy clients or business clients. I think that's just so important.
Right. Definitely goes back to what you said, integrity, because your business can't grow if you're still trying to nickel and dime every single person. And also, you're taking up space for things that you really could invest in. Mm-hmm. You're taking up time, space, mental energy, psychological, all that good stuff you're taking away because you want to get that dollar from that person that you know you really can't serve effectively. And they also, again, taking up time for other places. I've had people come to me and say, hey, I want you to see my kid, or hey, I want you to help me with this. And I said, you know what? That's out of my wheelhouse. I can't help you. And I don't want you to waste your time. Let me refer you to someone, and I'll contact somebody like a grief specialist or whoever it is. If it's out of my wheelhouse, it doesn't matter what the money looks like, because again, you're going to think you're wasting your money. It's going to cause a bad reputation on me. Like, I paid this guy all this money and he's not helping us. He don't know what he's doing. And I don't want to be one of those guys.
I remember when I first started peer consultation group, even when I started my practice, people would say, Althea, you have people calling you, but you're not taking these clients. How are you going to build your practice? It will come, because I don't want the wrong. And when I say I don't want to pathologize clients, but when I say I don't want the wrong client in, if you're taking my energy or if it's outside of my knowledge area, then I'm not serving you well. I'm doing more harm to you. Like, I don't train in the areas of psychosis. I don't do a lot of training in the areas of psychosis, especially schizophrenia. I train in psychosis because I know that there is some trauma-induced psychosis that may happen. But if a client calls, I'm going to ask you, do you have any psychosis or diagnosis of schizophrenia or anything like that? Because I'm not the person for you. I'm not just going to take people in and then learn. I had enough of that when I worked for a community mental health organization where you take whatever clients they put on your caseload, right? But you can craft your private practice. And that's the one thing that I absolutely love about being my own boss. Now, some days I'm like searching for jobs on the internet because I'm like, I'm done with this. But the day I want to do this for myself, I'm a build for myself. Right. And so, but it's the great thing that you can say, I don't work with that. You can say, I don't want you as a client. And that's one of the things that go along with having your own business.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that part. And it's fair. Again, go back to integrity and also letting the client know, hey, this is not a good fit. I'm just not a good fit. Yeah. Let's find somebody. And we have access to so many different people. We can go online and be like, hey, does anybody want to see this client? Yeah. So we have access to other clinicians, whether online or just in our personal, Rolodex. We're like, this person is better suited for you. That way I can take off the stress of me just leaving a client just by themselves. I can take off the stress of me of trying to, like you said, figure it out as they go, which is a disservice because it takes away from your skill set in a sense that you need what you really need to be focusing on.
Yeah. And speaking of referring, so there are some, and I'm just going to say this, there's some clinicians or mental health professionals that I'm like, I'm not referring, I'm not connected, I don't want to be associated, because at the end of the day, you have to protect yourself, you have to protect your business and your brand. The people that you're connected to can either propel you or derail you.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
And so, and there are some therapists who it's just like, I'm not referring a client to you. And that's okay, because I'm not a fit for everyone either. I am too raw, too real, respectful, Because I tell my clients, my intention is never to be disrespectful to you, but I'm not going to pacify it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, right? We laugh. It's okay to laugh. It's okay to make a connection. One of the biggest things that I think will hinder therapists is not connecting with your clients or developing that relationship. What we do is relational. Right?
Yes.
Those therapists who say, you're not paying me to be your friend, so I'm not going to tell you anything about me. Skirt, you're not going to get anywhere. And then you wonder why you're struggling with this client and why this client is not making progress. You mean to tell me you can't tell a client that you like peanut butter and jelly, right? It's relational. And it goes back to they go back to in school, and I know back in the day, they used to tell you that you don't talk about your clients to yourself. Now, there's a difference between getting therapy from your clients, though. Right? You don't want to do that. But making that connection, sharing with clients, they want to connect with you. And rightfully so, because they tell us their deepest, darkest secrets, things that they're ashamed of, that they haven't uttered to anyone else. And you mean to tell me you can't tell a client that you like steak or that you I eat at a lot of places I'm not going to name because where you eat at a place, I'm just going to say that. So because you know how some people, when you're an influencer, they hear things and then they start going out to buy or partake in those things. So I try to be careful about naming places and things that I go and engage in. But you can't talk to a client about that. You can't give them basic information about yourself.
Yeah.
You wonder why they don't trust you or won't open up to you.
Right. A couple of different things. Like you said in school, we're talking about self-disclosure. Be careful with self-disclosure. Don't self-disclosure unless it's appropriate. To me, a lot of times I tell my clients in the beginning, our relationship is reciprocal. Right. So you'll hear some things that I share because sometimes when you're telling a story, my 6-year-old self is sitting in that chair beside you. So I'm able to relate and connect. Now we can really talk about it. And I'm not all uptight and it's like, oh, okay. Like I had a client come in one day and I was just doing, I think a video, something, I don't know, but I had a suit on. I rarely wear a suit in my office. So this was a guy, he was from the hood, came in. And so we started talking. I did my professional stuff about self-disclosure, about confidentiality, all that type of stuff. He said, are you one of those therapists that said, the whole time? Because I had therapy before. I was like, no. He said, where are you from? I told him where I was from. And he said, oh, you said you from the hood? Like, okay. Everything, all these shoulders dropped. He felt relaxed. He was able to, he was like, I'm a light comer. He was like, after the first session, he said, I want to come twice, 2 or 3 times. I said, we ain't coming that many times. But I get it. I get it. You know, we're building a relationship, but we're not just hanging out, right? So, but I'm able to connect with you because we look like each other. We can have the same conversation. I'm not using a lot of the clinical jargon. I'm connecting to you in your language because your language is my language. And sometimes your experience is something that so let's just have a real, genuine conversation in a therapeutic space.
Absolutely. And I think that is so important, and the progress that your clients can make and you helping them move through the therapeutic process. Especially for me, I primarily worked up until last September, worked primarily with children and adolescents. And those kids who felt like they were dumb and stupid and couldn't learn, didn't understand that their trauma was getting in the way of their learning. And so I didn't share this with every client, but there were some clients that I had to share this with. My trauma was witnessing domestic violence and being psychologically and emotionally abused. And from first grade to probably the first half of my 10th grade year. So, and I could tell clients that, no, I haven't been sexually abused. I wasn't physically abused, but that psychological and emotional abuse was just as damning. And it put me in special education. And they look at me like, what? Because I own my own business. Like, yes, I was in special education up until the 7th grade because no one looked at what was going on. They thought that I was stupid and dumb. And it was like, put her in special education. it was like, I understood what you were saying. I knew the answers. I just wouldn't say anything. But when they see my degrees, that I have an undergrad degree in business management, I have an MBA in marketing, I have a dual social work degree, right? And I'm working on my PhD, that does something for a client, right? Oh, well, if she overcame this, then I can overcome it too. There is hope. Sometimes we have to instill hope in our story. We'll instill that hope for a client. And so if you can't be relational with your clients, appropriately relational, talking about sharing, and even some sharing could be inappropriate, but appropriate sharing with your clients, that can help them move through the therapeutic process, right? I played basketball. I was like, sought out by so many Division I schools, and I didn't know that I wanted to do that because I played sports to stay out of the house, right? With all of that. I don't know when something's going to pop off. So if I'm tired, I can go home, eat, shower, and go to bed and start all over. So I ended up going to a 2-year school because I was so overwhelmed with all of the offers and letters of intents and stuff that was coming at me. I was like, I don't want to do this. So I tell a client, when a client says, I got to go to a 2-year school or a community college, so what? Go to a community college. All you're going to learn is the basics those first 2 years anyway, right? So, but I'll tell them, I went to a 2-year college, but what does my 4-year degree say? Right? It's from a 4-year university. So that type of sharing, I think, is appropriate because, again, what we do is relational. And if you want your business to grow, you have to connect with your clients because your clients is who's going to refer other people to you.
Right. And it's so, we have like stories because thinking about it, like I was recruited for playing basketball at D1 schools, right? And so by the time I got to play, like my anxiety levels are so high, but expectations of performance, right? So I like ignored meetings. I didn't meet with different coaches that came to come talk to me, send me letters. It was just overwhelming. And I got to school. I went to East Tennessee State. And so I was supposed to go meet with the coach. And I called my mother, all my lights off in my room. I called my mother. I was like, I don't want to play basketball anymore. First time experiencing an anxiety attack. And she was like, okay, come home. I got on a Greyhound that took 14 hours and went home. And I said, I'm not playing basketball because it was just too much depression and stuff. So I tell clients about that performance anxiety. I work with some professional athletes to help them what it feels like with the exposure therapy on the basketball court and how to kind of manage those things. I didn't have those skills back then, but eventually I developed those skills. Who knows if I would have had those skills, I'd have been playing basketball. I don't know, but I know I'm in line. I'm in purpose right now. So those things are not just things that stop you from being who you are. Those are part of your story to get where you're going to go.
Absolutely. Again, we have to connect. You want your business to grow. You have to make some type of connection with your clients, some type of relationship with your clients. And that's how your business is going to grow. There are so many mindsets that we have to shatter when it comes to being a therapist. First off, we are human, right? And our clients work where we work, they live where we live, they shop where we shop. And you shutting down because you run across a client in the community, it's like, what? It's so many things that we have to learn or break those maladaptive thinking as professionals, as in the mental health field, right? That maladaptive thinking that can stall your growth as an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree.
Yep. So what are some of the things, let's talk so monetizing your skills, you mentioned, so you do some consulting. There are so many things. What are some of the things that therapists can do to monetize themselves and scale their businesses or achieve multiple sources of income? You're an author.
Yes, I'm an author. So, writing, I was able to monetize my gift, my calling, which is writing as well. I started off with a blog, and then you can put ads on there. You start to make slow money through there. I had a YouTube channel that had a lot of views, so I started making money through there. And that was just me talking and being open. Again, my book, speaking engagements. So the speaking engagement, it was so important for me. Initially, I had speaking engagement, but I didn't have a product. So I was getting paid little money for my speaking engagements, but if I had a product, I could make much, much more. And that was before I had a name. And sometimes I was speaking for free and I was walking away without a product. But there's also ways that you can link other things to it. So I have a speaking, say I got a speaking engagement. All right, so now follow up for consulting. Now follow up for this. Now follow up for that. So it's a lead magnet to other different things. Absolutely. So speaking, I had apparel, I had hats, I had T-shirts that had different sayings on it. So whatever I needed to do, that I wasn't going to leave the place without being able to monetize everything that I do.
Now, speaking and presenting, I think a lot of people confuse being a speaker with being a workshop presenter or facilitator. Right. Those are different, but you can still earn money from both. And one of the things that I run into is trying to get people to speak at that's another line of income. I just forgot about it. My conferences.
Yeah, right.
So getting people to speak at my conferences, but also to to be a trainer for my Play Therapy Institute. And I think a lot of people, and I'm going to do a podcast on this specifically, knowing the difference between worth and value, because a lot of people a lot of therapists miss out on opportunities because they don't know the difference between worth and value, right? Worth, it has a value, but your value does someone want it, right? So I know my worth. I think that's a trendy term in the psychotherapy world. I know my worth, so I'm not going to take this. Your worth is your worth. Great for you. But if it's not valued by someone else, guess what? It's just your worth. Right. And to become a speaker, because a lot of therapists are trying to become speakers or wanting to become speakers and facilitators and presenters. But if you can't show that you have experience in this, why give out? So this is my thing. You want to charge top shelf prices for your bottom shelf knowledge. Right. So, okay, you laughing, but this is raw. You heard the intro. It's raw.
This is real.
It's raw. It's real. It's like unfiltered. So you want to charge top shelf prices for your bottom shelf knowledge. For me, I'm looking to expand my institute. I want my Academy members to have different experiences, because both of us can be trauma professionals, but it's coming from our own lens. My experiences, I train based on my experiences, and you may train based on your experiences. Although it's trauma, you may bring something different to it. And so that's what I try to expose my Academy members to. So it's been so hard trying to get presenters because they want me to pay them. One is an interview. And this is what I try to tell them. This is an interview. You have to do a training to my academy to see if you connect with them. They're going to evaluate you. And then I'm going to pay you if you do ongoing. It's just like an interview, right? When you go in for a job interview, do you tell them you got to pay me my hourly rate just to sit here to get the job or see if I'm gonna get the job, right? And so, and I don't have a problem with paying people. You know, I ask them, what is your rate, right, for a 2-hour or 3-hour workshop? But then you want to charge me top dollar, but can't give me a speaker one sheet, don't even know what a speaker one sheet is, right? Then you can't give me a 3-minute professional video of yourself training or speaking on what it is that you want me to pay you top dollar for. That, my friends, is your worth, but it's not of value to me.
Right. And you know, the biggest part of that too, and that's what I say, remaining humble and having integrity. So when I spoke at your first thing, you were asking me to give the different things that I needed. I had no idea what you needed from me. Yeah. And so, but I wasn't afraid to ask you to say, what exactly do you need? Even when I sent the CV, I said the wrong thing and you was like, no, not that. I was like, oh my God. So I reached out to somebody else to get the information of what I needed. And then there's a flip side of that, with some of us who had experience, have knowledge, have all these trainings and certifications, and then we undercharge because we're afraid to kind of rock the boat. We're afraid to say, oh, if I charge this, I won't get picked. But if the person can't understand your value and you know, you talk about worth, you understand your value, what you bring to the table, then that's not the one for you as well. So it's on both sides of it. But if a person like you, if you see somebody, you know, they're on their game, they're giving you what you need, then you're going to say, okay, I can understand. I can make that sacrifice because I know that's going to bring value, not just to the moment, but to my practice, because I'm presenting in my conference. I'm having the top presenters on here, and people are going to walk away and be like, okay, Althea put this thing together and it's dope.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You have to know it, but then touching on imposter syndrome, we just touching on all kinds of stuff that come up in business that can stall your business or not allow your business to grow. That imposter syndrome, I don't belong here. I'm not worth it and stuff. So I think you have to bring balance. And that's when it comes to making connections. Again, the people that you connect yourself with or align yourself to or with, they can either propel you or derail you. Right. Mm-hmm. And so you have to make sure that you're making the right business connections and showing up in the rooms. A lot of people say, I want a mentor. I have people that come into my inbox all the time saying, hey, mentor, like, when did I become your mentor? Right.
No, I ain't signed up for that.
And it's like, and people say, oh, they always want me to pay for something, or no one's available. What rooms are you showing up in? And sometimes those rooms has a cost. There is a ticket price. There's a mentor. I have a mentee, and I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this story, but I met her at my 2019 conference. I had no idea I was going to become her mentor. She had no idea that I was going to become her mentor. She told me, she saw me, she was like, oh my God, she started crying. I was like, this is weird. Like,
I think I remember you mentioned that at the conference.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute. And people, it's just so funny. People are like, oh my gosh, she's the unicorn lady. My great niece want to become therapist. And her mom was like, you better call your auntie. And she didn't know I was the unicorn lady. No. So, but it was so funny because, she was but when she told me her story, she was just out of, social work school. Her friends told her that she was crazy for spending money to fly from Chicago to Virginia to spend 4 days at my conference and all of that. And I was like, okay, if you stop crying, because she cried every time she saw me. And I was like, if you stop crying and enjoy this party, I will be your mentor. And so then you can tell your friends that you invested in yourself and it paid off, because not only do you get my knowledge, my guidance, but she also got free access to my play therapy academy. So she's going to become a registered play therapist for free because I'm her mentor, right? So I tell people you have to show up in rooms, and sometimes that room has a price, whether it's $25 or $500. You never know who you're going to meet and connect with. It's just so important, that self-investment, even time and reading, right? Mm-hmm. So there's just so many things that we could keep going on and on about, the business of psychotherapy practice. But I have one last question for you. How does finding purpose align with therapists creating their success stories?
It's so important. Again, going back to integrity, authenticity. So if I find my purpose, I know what I struggle with. I know what my success story looks like before I tell it to the world. I'm able to connect with that experience, and I'm able to share it in an authentic way. So I knew that my purpose was relationships because I wanted one so bad, because I've seen bad relationships happen growing up. I saw so many failed relationships. I saw dysfunction within family, within friends, all those different things. And then I had my own personal tragedies with relationships. But I wasn't afraid to talk about them. I wasn't afraid to talk about the pain, and because with that pain became purpose. So I was able to look at that and say, how can I share this with someone to help somebody else? And not necessarily make it about me in a selfish way, but in a way that I'm really connected to it. So anytime I got my default, I got my purpose. So my purpose is to serve, right? And so everything that I do, it has servitude with it, but it does not mean that I'm serving for free. If I know what my purpose is and I'm connected to it, because the purpose keeps you up. The purpose reminds you every time you're outside. It doesn't feel good when you're outside of your purpose. Like physically, emotionally, psychologically, it doesn't feel good. But when you're in your purpose, you're able to just sit down and just come up with things. Allow that to happen Don't challenge that. Don't be
Yes.
afraid and say, oh, this is just too easy. No, that's part of your purpose.
Yes.
That's part of your purpose.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I think that but sometimes people force their purpose, and sometimes your purpose is not always clear or seen. For me,
Right.
my purpose came out of doing what I'm doing. Right. This was not what I had for me. This is what God had for me. And like I had to do a video this morning, a Facebook Live, saying how I was out of the will of God. He wanted something for me that I didn't want for myself. I wanted something different. And although what I was doing was still successful and prosperous, it was hell to get it done. It was so hard. And I started noticing all of the patterns of how hard it was because it wasn't what I was supposed to be doing. So I had to realign myself with my purpose. One, I had to accept my purpose and then realign myself with it, because it just, like I said, it was one of those seasons that was so difficult. I've been in the most difficult season of my business. And I started in 2011. And the past 2 years is like, God, when is this season going to end? Because it's just been hard. But when I took a step back and I reflected on it, I wasn't doing what he wanted me to do.
Yeah. I went through the same thing when I was working in child welfare. And it was just like, well, if you stay here for 20 years, you'll make 6 figures. So in my mind, I was just like, all right, let me just stay here. It's comfortable. You get the vacation, you get all the whatever the bonuses, whatever that stuff is called. I can't even remember because I've been so far out of working for somebody else. The benefits, that's what it was, the benefits. So it's just like, and people, and people outside of it is like, you're going to leave the job, even people that I was in relationship with. You're going to leave this secure job to do your own thing. It was so uncomfortable being outside of purpose that every little thing used to bother me. It went from bothering my relationship with my son. Like I didn't have access to him when I needed to. I didn't have access to him when I wanted to, run my own schedule. And to be honest with you, even if I looked way before that, I said I wanted to be an attorney. I wanted to be a juvenile judge. I had an offer to go to Vanderbilt to go into the law and JD program, but I also got a scholarship to go to my school for a 1-year program. So it's 3 years versus 1 year. So I said, let me do the 1-year expedited program. And then from that point on, eventually getting into child welfare, it was just so uncomfortable. And my mentor was saying, like, you're not going to be okay there. Like, you're too creative. You want to be outside the box. You want to be more connected with the clients. You want to be able to touch the community. But with that, you're so boxed in. You have all these different rules and regulations, and it's less about the client and it's more about what the numbers look like. So I said, all right, let me be obedient. Like you said, God used to wake me up and say, I'm gonna make this uncomfortable because this is not where you're supposed to be. And so many different things were happening that were just unnecessary. And I just stopped fighting. And I said, Lord, I submit. 2018, it was a lot. I had so much transition in 2018 from losing friends, losing family members, not like on this earth, but just not being connected to them anymore, losing a relationship and just saying, okay, all these toxic things need to stop. And once I got rid of those and I went through my process of healing and detox, which was uncomfortable as well.
Yes.
When I started at the end of the year, I was like, all right. And while people thought it was like everything was successful, everything was happening, it's like, oh, that's amazing. I was literally not sleeping. I was up. I was just struggling. Like this testimony, it was just ridiculous. And then 2019, things started happening because I was just submitting. I said, okay, I'm just following your will. Yeah, that's it. Yep. And they just started happening, and they're still happening, which I love it.
Absolutely. I've loved watching your transition and your growth. We actually connected 2 years ago through a mutual friend. I went to high school with him, so I've known him for over 30 years. And I remember that first, and I was talking about the things that I wanted to do in the psychotherapy realm, and he's a teacher. He was like, hey, I know someone, reached out to you to see if it was okay to give me your information. But I remember when I first reached out to you and I was like, hey, Alf, we have a mutual friend, Alex, he was like, I know a lot of Alexes, right? And but we first got to work together when you presented at my conference. I was like, hey, I have this idea. I want the people to see that Black fathers do exist in the lives of their children, and a positive, I want them to see the positive aspects of Black fatherhood. And you answered the call without many questions or anything. So I will be forever. And then Aaron came, and then you connected with Aaron. And let me tell you, people still talk about you all's workshop at my inaugural Black Play Therapy conference, because they thought that it was going to, and the thing that they kept saying to me, I didn't go because I thought it was going to be that same negative narrative. People crying and everything coming out, talking about how beautiful it was and everything. And I was like, damn, I missed that. I was I missed it too.
That was one of the things that we want to change the narrative. Like, there's so much information of us being present, but the media shows something different. The conversation with people who are upset, they talk more than the people who are just present, than the fathers that are just present. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how to re-engage a father that isn't present. Let's talk about re-engaging a mother who may be struggling with the relationship with her father. So that was the whole point of our thing, to really show that we really do exist, and how to repair relationships as co-parents.
Absolutely. And then the connections that was made, because you and Aaron blowing up and doing some things. And I was just like, I'm so glad I can still reach out to y'all and you answer my calls, right? And that's about that relationship building. Yeah. Congratulations. Tell everybody about the HBO special, because I know that they can probably catch the replay of it. So tell people about that, but it's that connection. So when y'all big and blowing up, I can still text or go in your inbox and say, hey, can we work on this?
Right. So here's another story about humility and obedience. So the idea of what's good, bro, came to me. And I said, I can't do this by myself. I said, let me reach out. I reached out to Aaron. I reached out to Rayshawn. And we weren't even connected to Stevan yet. Yeah. So I was like, yo, we need another person. And it was like, yeah, just one more. And so I reached out to Stevan. He was like, yeah, I'm down. And so we got on a text message thread that same day. And it's like, we've been knowing each other the whole time.
Yes.
And so it's like, we got to do this. And our flow and our conversation is fluid. Seems like we're best buds from way back in the day. Yeah. And I was like, imagine if I would have been selfish and be like, you know what, I'm going to do this thing by myself. So now we did the free video. And then somebody reached out to Rayshawn and was like, hey, Dr. Joy. She reached out to Rayshawn and was like, we want to put this thing on HBO. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. So we did that. It's aired now. It's posted on our social media. We don't know when they're going to put them, whenever they're going to show the episode on HBO, but it's guaranteed to be on there. And it's just an amazing opportunity just to being obedient, being humble, in integrity, and being able to just share these moments with people and create relationships.
Yes. So I want to thank you. We've come to the end of this informational session or podcast episode of Chronicles of a Play Therapist. So I want to thank everybody. If you want to reach out to Paul Bashea Williams, you can get all of the show notes, and his links will be in the show notes. And I just want to say thank you again, because I was just like, hey, you want to come on and talk about business? And you was like, I'm down for it. It was just that simple. It was just that, back and forth, we just made it happen, right? And I appreciate that. Those are the types of relationships that I want to cultivate, where it's like, if I need something, I can just call and say, hey, this is the idea, you need something. Those are the type of relationships that's going to help people monetize and grow and scale their businesses. And it's so important. So not only the business relationships development of relationships with your clients. Yes. So thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Chronicles of a Play Therapist. And thanks for playing. And until next time, play well.
Chronicles of a Play Therapist is sponsored by Unicorn Life Play Therapy Academy, where play therapy is magical. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe in your favorite podcast app and follow us on YouTube. Chronicles of a Play Therapist is intellectual property of Althea Simpson. All rights reserved.